words about your host today, Alexander Payne. He grew up in Omaha, studied history and Spanish literature at Stanford, and then earned a master's degree in film production at UCLA. His eight features have been nominated for a total of 24 Oscars, including 4 times for Best Picture and 3 times for Best Director. He has won twice for Best Adapted Screenplay, for Sideways and The Descendants, and his latest, The Holdovers, won Best Supporting Actress last year. He is an ardent supporter of film preservation and a lifelong movie buff, and he serves on the board of the Film Foundation. He is currently at work on a new screenplay and is preparing for his next movie. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Alexander Payne.
An event. When it first came out in 1959, it was an event. Seeing it in re-release a few years later, as I did at our Cinerama Theater in Omaha, was an event. And now to see Ben-Hur on a Saturday morning at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, restored from an 8K scan of the original negative, scrubbed clean of imperfections, and even with newly stabilized matte painting backgrounds, this is an event. We will remember this morning for the rest of our lives. Since time is limited, I'll start by saying that there is a lot of information out there about it if you're interested, including a pretty nifty 1-hour documentary on YouTube. There you can learn the basics, all the money it cost, all the money it made, all the Oscars it won, how it saved financially imperiled MGM, how Wyler made Stephen Boyd wear dark contact lenses to distinguish his eyes from Heston's, how the Romans are British and the Jews are American, except for Haya Hayari, who was Israeli, how Martha Scott was cast yet again after the 10 Commandments as Heston's mother. But I'll touch on a few things. Like Judah Ben-Hur himself, General Lew Wallace led a colorful life with many chapters. He fought in both the Mexican and Civil Wars, and served as an Indiana state senator, governor of New Mexico, and ambassador to Turkey. His Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, was both the best-selling American novel of the 19th century and the source of a theatrical sensation that toured for 20 years. Future Western superstar William S. Hart originated the role of Messala on Broadway, soon joined by another future silent star, William Farnham, as Ben-Hur. The chariot race was always the biggest attraction. On stage, in a short 1907 film version where they staged it with the help of the Brooklyn Fire Department, and of course in the spectacular 1925 MGM feature directed by my fellow Nebraskan Fred Nimlo. I'm sure most of you know that young William Wyler worked as one of many assistants on that chariot race. You may not know that Sergio Leone worked as an assistant on this one. Another veteran of the silent Ben-Hur was producer Sam Zimbalist, who'd worked as an editor. With one hugely successful Roman epic already under his belt, Quo Vadis, 1951, he approached Wyler about remaking Ben-Hur. Wyler thought he was joking. "Get Cecil B. DeMille," he said. Zimbalist told him, "No, Willie, what we want is the good intimate stuff. The spectacle can take care of itself." What Zimbalist wisely sought was the Wyler touch, sophistication, depth, and impeccable performances. Eventually, Wyler accepted both for the challenge of making an epic, and frankly, for the money. "I thought that movie would make a lot of money," he later said, "and I'd get some of it," which I did. And as an old Western director, he was interested in doing the chariot race, although eventually he had to allow others to do it. He was also intrigued by a story involving Jews struggling for freedom. The biggest problem was Carl Tunberg's script, which Wyler called obvious and primitive. So a fleet of writers, including Maxwell Anderson, Gore Vidal, and most importantly, playwright Christopher Fry, all took whacks at it. Gore Vidal claimed that in his rewrite of the first half, he wanted to weave a subtle homoerotic thread between Ben-Hur and Messala. but it was Fry who stayed at Wyler's side during production, often rewriting scenes the day before they shot. In the original stage version, Christ himself was never shown. He was represented by a shaft of light. In the two feature versions, his face is never shown. What was important were the reaction shots of others looking at him. Wyler auditioned countless actors to play the Roman soldier who refuses water to Ben-Hur, no water for him, but moments later is shamed by Christ. When the day came to shoot the scene, Wyler said, "Wait, that's not the guy I cast." "Yeah," said an AD, "but that guy wanted too much money. This is one of the other guys you liked. Go get the guy I cast." Heston reports that wait cost production $15,000. By the way, that guy's line became the running gag on set for the rest of the picture. If an actor blew a take, Wyler would say, "No water for him." If the dolly gripped Mr. Mark, "No water for him." Years later, whenever Heston and Wyler would meet, the first thing they'd say to each other is, "No water for you." Shooting took 9 months, from May 1958 to January 1959. And the pressure was so constant, so stressful, and the hot Italian summer so punishing that it claimed a casualty in producer Sam Zimbalist, who died of a heart attack during production at age 53. The man with the vision for the movie did not live to see its massive success. Now, when we think of the most spectacular passages in all of cinema, which spring to mind? I'll bet some of mine are some of yours. The Red Shoes dance, the climactic battle in the rain in Seven Samurai, the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, the marriage montage in Up. But nothing beats a certain 9-minute chariot race. Both second unit director Andrew Martin and stunt coordinator Yakima Knut wrote about its filming, and this was interesting, neither much mentions the other. In fact, Knut reports that he had been initially contacted to direct the race, that his stipulations for horses, stunt riders, and composition of the track were so specific that it scared the producers into bringing on Martin as the official second unit director. Andrew Martin, as many of you may know, was a Hungarian-born filmmaker whose record as a director was admittedly lackluster, but he was a top-notch second unit action director. In fact, he had done the Dunkirk landing in Wyler's own Mrs. Miniver. And you can glimpse some of his other stellar work in Cleopatra. He does the whole, Cleopatra's March into Rome that ends with the wink. And some extraordinary sequences in 55 Days of Payne. Of the decision to hire Martin, Knut later wrote, "Fortunately, throughout the filming of the race, Martin basically stayed by the cameras and contented himself with hollering action and cut. Of course, if we were shooting the principals, then he got involved." In his account, Martin doesn't exactly diss Knut, but he doesn't mention him much either. Zimbalist's orders were to make the race as good as was humanly and humanely possible, Martin wrote. I, not we, I, made it as good as I humanly could in 10 weeks, and without the loss of a single horse or man. Our concept of how the race was that it should resemble a musical score with constant crescendos and decrescendos. They imported 82 horses from Yugoslavia, 2 teams for each chariot. So when you think about the enormity of making this movie, just consider transporting, housing, training, shoeing, feeding, grooming, and then returning 82 horses. Upon arrival in Rome, Heston and Boyd started learning how to drive a chariot, and by the time shooting started, they were both so skilled that the filmmakers could get close shots of them actually driving. Wyler himself directed the entrance of the chariots into the arena, and in order to establish the set and the thousands of extras, he had the idea of having the teams parade once around before starting the race, because everybody knew that once the race started, you wanted to be in close. Knut's memoir includes incredible details of staging the race, and one accident deserves mention. In the script, 2 chariots collide against the track's huge intermediate, but the ground crew doesn't have enough time to clear the wreckage before the other chariots spin around and return. That's when Masala tries to force Ben-Hur into the wreck, and Ben-Hur's team has to vault over it. Knut's own 22-year-old son, Joe, was doubling for Heston and disobeyed specific instructions on where to hold on. So he got flipped over the front of the chariot and landed on the reins between the horses. Fortunately, he suffered only minor injuries, and the silver lining was that it looked so awesome that they designed a new shot of Heston climbing back into the chariot. So when you see that in the race, that was an accident. There's no truly great movie without truly great movie music, and Miklos Rozsa's magnificent score is no exception. It's interesting to note, however, that the chariot race plays test it. 3 final thoughts. First, for me, Ben-Hur is the platonic ideal of what a 3.5-hour movie should look like. An epic adventure that kids can understand and adults can appreciate the nuances. Second, we should all rewatch William Wyler movies and keep his memory alive. Third, it's lovely that we're seeing this movie so soon after Passover and Easter, because it's a story of suffering and redemption, triumph over hardship, rebirth. But for me personally, by far the most valuable and resonant thematic takeaway from Ben-Hur is that if you're going to hire roofers, particularly old school tile roofers, for God's sake, don't skimp. All hail Warner Brothers Discovery, all hail the Film Foundation, all hail Turner Classic Movies.